UFC Vegas 65 betting and DraftKings show. We have 12 fights this Saturday afternoon. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to get things started in the women's flyweight division as Natalia Silva comes in as a minus 165 favorite with the comeback on the UFC debutante Teresa Bladea is plus 140. And this is a spot where I definitely have some interest in the underdog, and I think that might be sort of on an island this week, and I'm okay with that. I think Teresa Bladea, while she is extremely young and inexperienced, the level of competition is certainly a concern. I do think that she has the skill set and some tools to be able to be a live underdog in a matchup like this against Natalia Silva, who I think the market is just sort of overreacting to her impressive UFC debut against Jasmine Jasudavicius. She came in as a big underdog in that spot and looked excellent. She stuffed a couple takedowns from Jasmine, who has okay wrestling. She also outlanded Jasmine on the feet, which wasn't all that surprising, but based on her regional tape, it seemed like the 2.5 years off certainly did her well. Her striking looked to be on point. Her defensive grappling, she even landed a takedown or two of her own. So I think Natalia Silva is a decent prospect, but I think she's going to struggle with the size of Teresa Bladea here. Bladea is 5 inches taller. She's got a 6-inch reach advantage, and while she doesn't have a ton of tools in terms of the striking, she basically is a low output, throw a couple leg kicks here and there. It's just to set up her entry on her takedowns, which she actually does have good takedowns for this division. She's a very powerful girl. She'll get in on the legs. Double leg takedowns should be there all day against Natalia Silva. I rate Bladea's wrestling much stronger than Jasmine Jasudavicius. I expect her to get takedowns here. And as we saw, I talked about her on my Contender Series breakdown this past season. As we saw on the regional scene, when she gets on top and in favorable positions, she has some nasty ground and pound that she's going to look to land here. And I just think that could be a problem for the smaller Silva here if she gets stuck on bottom and can't find like one of her arm bars that she has a bunch on her record. If she can't make something like that happen, I think she could be in trouble here and potentially Bladea could get the finish here. So I like Bladea as the underdog. Bladea by TKO is the official pick. I actually really like this fight for DraftKings purposes because I do think Silva does have at least a little bit of finishing upside in terms of the grappling. She has a bunch of armbar finishers on her record. That's possible here against an inexperienced fighter like Bladea, who is very long and lanky. But then on the flip side, I think Bladea is super live for a TKO, positional TKO finish on the mat as well. So give me Bladea, the underdog. I'm going to have exposure to both sides, but I'm definitely taking a shot on the underdog here in Bladea. And up next, Brady Highstand comes in as a minus 170 favorite. The comeback on Fernie Garcia is plus 145. Fernie Garcia is another former Dana White Contender Series product. He fought 2 seasons ago. This is a guy that I actually bet against on that season. He was one of the prospects that I was the least excited about. I didn't think he should have got a contract despite getting the TKO finish. I didn't think it was all that impressive. I don't think he's that great of a fighter, and he sort of proved that in his UFC debut, right, against Journey Newson, who was able to take him down twice and basically just out-volume him as well. I think while Fernie does have a little bit of pop in his punches, he just doesn't put enough volume out there, and he's always struggled to defend the takedowns. That was a problem on the regional scene as well. That was partly the reason I bet against him with Joshua Weems, and it didn't end up coming through for me. But either way, I just think that angle is super live, and now he's facing a wrestler in Brady Highstand, who we saw on The Ultimate Fighter, who fought Ricky Turcios in the finale, landed 6 takedowns in that fight. I think Highstand is going to be able to keep it competitive on the feet and then mix in the takedowns where he should have the big edge. The concern with Highstand is the dude's super hittable. He basically blocks punches with his face, so that's obviously concerning against a powerful boxer like Fernie Garcia, but I'm not all that concerned. Fernie, while he is able to sting a lot of people across the regional scene, he really doesn't follow up when he gets guys hurt, and I think that could be an opportunity where if Brady does get hurt, then he's in on the takedowns and gets the fight where he needs it. So give me Highstand by decision. That's the official pick, and I think he's a solid target in that mid to upper mid tier on DraftKings this week. And up next, we have the second of 3 female fights on the card. It's Maria Oliveira coming in as a slightest favorite, minus 115. The comeback on Vanessa Demopolis is minus 105. And Oliveira is not somebody that I rated super highly. She fought Tabitha Ricci in her last fight in her UFC debut, was taken down multiple times there, controlled on the mat. She was able to survive and not get submitted, so feather in her cap for that. But in terms of this matchup, I think she could have some advantages here against Vanessa Demopolis. She's going to have a a 10-inch reach advantage. She's going to stand 4 inches taller. She's going to be the bigger fighter in there. And Vanessa Demopolis, while she does have all the upside in the grappling in this matchup, I don't trust her wrestling ability all that much. And if she can't get the fight to the ground, she's a punching bag on the feet. And I mentioned the 10-inch reach advantage for Oliveira. Vanessa Demopolis has those little T-Rex arms, only a 59-inch reach, which is one of the shorter reaches on the UFC roster. So I think Oliveira can use her size, hopefully keep the fight standing, and outpoint Demopolis on her way to a decision victory. So give me Oliveira by decision. That's the official pick, but I think there's better fights to target this week. And next fight up, we have Ricky Turcios coming in as a -155 favorite. The comeback on Kevin Natividad is +135. And Turcios is just never a guy that I want to lay juice on. I just do not trust this guy, and he really proved why in his last fight against Amin Zahabi, where I think he was a popular play there against Zahabi, who is basically just a low-volume guy, does have a little bit of pop in his punches, but isn't really going to pour it on anybody. And he outlanded Ricky Turcios 2-1, basically. He rocked him early in that fight, and maybe that had something to do with it. Turcios only landed like 27 significant strikes that entire fight. He basically did nothing, which was very uncharacteristic because, you know, on the Ultimate Fighter and on the regional scene, he was more of a guy that's going to pour on the volume. He fights a very low fight IQ game plan, but he's at least exciting. He's going to push a pace. When he does get taken down, he's always active with elbows, throwing up submissions. That's the reasons you like a guy like Turcios. But the fight IQ, I think, is why you can't back him at a juice price. And I think this line, we're getting Natividad at +135 because he's 0-2 in the UFC and he's been knocked out both times. So we really haven't been able to see a good showcase from him here. And his durability, yes, it's a concern. He's been knocked out 3 times in his career, but now he's coming off a 1.5-year layoff. He had a camp change as well. I believe he's at fight ready now. I think all of the upside is on the Natividad side because Natividad, you know, coming into the UFC, he did have at least a little bit of a wrestling background, and I think that could play a role here against Ricky Turcios, who we know can give up takedowns. He's willing to accept guard, play off his back, which I think is generally a losing strategy. And then on top of that, I think Natividad is clearly the more powerful striker here. And Turcios, while he hasn't been knocked out a ton, I do kind of question the durability, and I think we saw that in that Zahabi fight when he got rocked and he was just kind of out of it for the rest of the fight. So I think Natividad is interesting as an underdog here. I probably won't bet him, but I definitely have interest on DraftKings. I could see him being one of the lower-owned fighters that has the potential to break the slate. Next fight up, we have Miles Johns, a -165 favorite. The comeback on Vince Morales is +140, and this is an interesting matchup because we have Miles Johns taking the fight on short notice, but he is a moderate favorite here, and Miles Johns is historically just not somebody that we can trust. You know, he comes from a decent wrestling background, but he's proven so far he cannot keep any type of wrestling pace in the UFC. He's actually just 1 for 10 on takedown attempts inside the UFC. So I think we can stop with this whole narrative like, oh, he's this high-level wrestler, he's going to just land multiple takedowns here. He just doesn't do it. And even in his last couple fights, he's not even shooting anymore, really, because he knows he can't push that wrestling pace for even 10 minutes, let alone 15. And that's why we see him wilting in these fights and getting finished like he did in his last fight against John Castaneda. So I think in this matchup, where he'd be an idiot not to wrestle a guy like Vince Morales, who only defends takedowns at less than 50%, who really that is the way to beat him. He's a one-dimensional boxer. But I don't think Miles Johns is going to do it, and I don't think he can, even if he does implement that game plan, particularly on short notice here. So even though I don't even like Vince Morales, I think he's kind of a bum, I think he should be able to win this fight just strictly based off of cardio. I think we see a pretty low-volume, pure boxing game plan from both of these fighters, and if Johns isn't going to land takedowns here, then I think it's going to be a really close fight. I'd rather have the underdog, and then also Morales has the better cardio. Johns on short notice could gas out again. Maybe Morales can get a late stoppage. Either way, I think I have more interest in the dog once again. So we're going Vince Morales by decision. That's the official pick. And up next, we have Marina Moroz, a -190 favorite with Jennifer Maia on the comeback at +160. And this is probably one of the fights I'm the least excited about on the entire card. I favor Marina Moroz. I think she's a better minute winner, a better round winner. And I think she's going to be the more active fighter. I think Jennifer Maia, while she does have an okay skill set, she's never really somebody that I want to back because she's so low volume on the feet, doesn't have much finishing ability. And yes, she could grapple, I guess, a little bit, but she only averages 0.33 takedowns per 15 minutes, and I'm not even sure that that could be a path for her here. Moroz is very well-rounded. I even think Moroz could potentially land at 1 or 2 takedowns in this fight. Overall, it's just not a fight that I'm going to be keying in on for DraftKings, and I'm just willing to hit a pass on it. Moroz by decision is the official pick, but I'm much more interested in the other fights on this card. Next fight up, we have Charles Johnson, a -160 favorite with the comeback on Zhalgas Zhumagulov at +140. And Zhumagulov, I mean, just rewatching that Molina fight, I'm like, how did we get robbed on Zhalgas here? I feel like a lot of people had him as an underdog in that spot. Even Jeff Molina thought that Zhalgas had won the fight. He couldn't believe he won it himself, so it still tilts me to this day. Obviously, I put up a tweet about it earlier. But anyway, I think in terms of this matchup, it's kind of hard to break down, right? Because Charles Johnson, a lot of people were on him as a big underdog against Muhammad Mokaev. We just didn't get to see much from him in that fight. He only landed 12 significant strikes through 15 minutes. He was basically just trying to defend takedowns or working back up to his feet the entire fight. So he didn't get to show really anything. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to weigh it too much because it was a tough opponent in his UFC debut, but I also don't want to weigh the regional tape that highly either based on what we saw from his debut. So I think this could be one that kind of has a lot of variance in it, but I do kind of like the Zhalgas side once again here just because he's a guy who you know is always going to bring it. He's always going to be in these close fights. And yes, he's been on the wrong side of a lot of those close fights, but I have to think eventually he's going to start getting those 50-50 rounds are going to fall in his favor. I think he could smother up Johnson against the cage, sort of like Mokaev did. I think he can mix in a takedown or two. And while he doesn't put like a massive stamp on rounds, I think in a close fight, that forward pressure and that controlled grappling, I think could be the difference here. So give me Zhumagulov by decision. That's the official pick. Next up in the welterweight division, we have Jack Della Maddalena coming in as the biggest favorite on the card at -560. The comeback on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts is +430. I don't have to spend a ton of time here. I think most people would agree. I think Jack Della Maddalena is going to piece up Danny Roberts on the feet. Roberts is a guy who's historically very untrustworthy, coming off a decision loss to Francisco Trinaldo, but it's the durability that's a big concern. He's been finishing 5 of his 6 professional losses, and now he's facing a guy who's on a 12-fight winning streak. 10 of those wins have come by knockout. He's got very sharp boxing skills, does Della Maddalena, and I think he pieces up Danny Roberts on the feet and eventually gets him out of there, probably in the first, maybe the second round. Jack Della Maddalena by knockout is the official pick, and he's a strong play on DraftKings. Next fight up, we have Muslim Salikhov, a -115 favorite, with Andre Fialho as the slight underdog, a -105. And this is a matchup that I do like quite a bit for the Salikhov side. I know there's concerns. He's coming off a knockout just in July, so it's kind of a quick turn for a guy who's 38 years old, an older fighter, making a relatively quick turnaround after being knocked out for the first time in his career. But stylistically speaking, this should be a great matchup for him against Andre Fialho, who, yes, he's younger, but he probably has more durability concerns. He's been knocked out 3 times in his career, and he's coming off a knockout himself as well. Both of these guys have a ton of power, but I think Salikhov is the more technical striker. He's much more sound defensively. Fialho gets hit way too much for you to feel comfortable. And I just think Salikhov, if he's able to avoid that kill shot from Fialho, like I think he's going to be able to do, I think he kind of styles on Fialho and gives him the vet lesson here. So I like Salikhov potentially on the money line. I like the under 2.5 as well. I think prices right now are pretty good there. Salikhov by knockout in the +300 range. I like that prop angle as well. So it's going to be Salikhov by knockout. That's the official pick. And I like this fight for DraftKings in that mid-range this week. And moving right along to the first of 2 heavyweight bouts, we have Waldo Cortez Acosta, a -210 favorite. The comeback on Chase Sherman is +185. And we just saw Cortez Acosta make his UFC debut off Dana White's Contender Series. He faced Jared Vanderas just 3 weeks ago. So the UFC gave him the layup matchup there. He was unable to get a finish. And yes, he won, but he showed some holes in that fight. Vandeira was eating up his leg early in that fight. He didn't land a ton more on the feet than Vandeira, and I think that's kind of concerning against a guy like Chase Sherman, who was able to finish Jared Vandeira, who was able to get off on volume as well. I think Sherman has the potential to be the more active fighter of the two. Acosta comes from a boxing background. He does have decent cardio for the heavyweight division, but if he's unable to find that kill shot against Chase Sherman here, I think Sherman's certainly a live dog in the plus 185 range. I don't think Acosta is a terrible prospect by any stretch, but I do have some concerns seeing him with a big favorite juiced up price tag here, especially off a quick turnaround from his last fight that I didn't even think was all that impressive. So I have interest in the underdog. We're going Chase Sherman here in this one, and he's going to be the official pick. Next fight up in the light heavyweight division, Kennedy Dechukwu comes in as a minus 175 favorite. The comeback on Ian the Hulk Cutelaba is plus 150, and I do think we're seeing at least somewhat of an overcorrection in terms of the Ian Cutelaba money line here, just because, he's coming off these 2 first-round submission victories, and yes, those are obviously not good looks against Ryan Spann and Johnny Walker, but I do think this is a step down for him in terms of competition level, and Dechukwu is not a grappling threat. I know that's always a concern with the wrestling of Cutelaba, is he sticks his neck out there and decent enough grapplers are gonna be able to snatch it up. And the cardio is the other concern, right? Like, this dude comes out like a bat out of hell in round 1. He looks great in round 1. He's a very explosive fighter, has that early knockout potential, but also the ability to land takedowns in bulk as well. I expect him to win round 1 at a high clip here. The problem is the gas tank, because as soon as he starts to fade, he starts to become very hittable on the feet. Kennedy Dechukwu is somebody that's known to have good cardio for this division. He's had multiple fights where he was probably losing early and ended up taking over late. The Danilo Marquez fight comes to mind, the Carlos Ulberg fight as well. That's kind of his MO, so I can definitely see the angle there for Dechukwu, but is that the sole reason why he should be a minus 175? I can't quite get there, especially since I'm factoring him in to probably lose round 1 and even potentially get finished in round 1. So I like the dog here in Ian Cutelaba. I think he has multiple takedown upside. I think he's got finishing potential as well. So he's one of my favorite underdogs on the entire slate on DraftKings. So we're going Cutelaba by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event as Sergey Spivak comes in as a minus 195 favorite with Derek the Black Beast Lewis on the comeback at plus 165. And Derek Lewis is somebody who always has that one punch power. He's got the most knockouts in heavyweight UFC history. So we know he has the power to put your lights out at any moment. He's proven that time and time in his career. But the negative is I'm not fully convinced that when the going gets tough in there, that he's willing to fight till the death and willing to fight for your money. He kind of just wilts and looks for a way out. And I think that has the potential to happen here against Sergey Spivak, who's a very well-rounded fighter for the heavyweight division. His striking is not great, but it's decent enough until he sets up his takedowns, and that's where he shines. He averages over 4 takedowns per 15 minutes here. If he takes down Lewis multiple times, I think he's able to wear on him on the ground. He's also very active on the ground with his ground and pound, hunting for submissions as well. I think he could probably force a quit out of Derek Lewis here. Again, there's always a chance that Lewis could find the knockout shot, so I'm willing to target both sides of this main event, but I'm definitely going to have a heavier lean towards Sergey Spivak in the main event. So give me Spivak by TKO. That's the official pick, and he's an obvious target on DraftKings as well. And as always, guys, you can check out fightnumbers.com, where I'll have DraftKings player rankings broken down by salary tier. I'll have ownership projections, line movement. It's all completely free. Fightnumbers.com. Check it out. Do me a favor, like the video, subscribe if you don't already, drop a comment. Let me know who you think wins the main event this week. I definitely appreciate it, guys. Best of luck, and we'll see you guys next time.